So this video is going to have a look at an example of solving a problem that involves traveling in different time zones. So just remembering, when we are looking at traveling in time zones, there's two different methods we can use to calculate the difference in time. The first one is the zones, using the GMT or UTC time zones when we're calculating the difference in our zone locations, or using the longitude difference between the two cities, where 1 degree of longitude is equal to 4 minutes. So you might have problems that is using either one of those methods to be able to calculate our time zones. So it's important that we are familiar with both of those methods. So now let's go ahead and have a look at our example. So in the example, we have a flight that's departing Brisbane that has a time zone of UTC plus 10, and it's departing Brisbane at 9:10 a.m. and it's traveling to Singapore that has a UTC time zone of plus 8, and it's expected that the flight is going to take 7 hours and 55 minutes. So all of that is important information. We have Brisbane, that's UTC plus 10, Singapore, that's UTC plus 8 in a time zone. The flight is leaving Brisbane at 9:10 a.m. and is going to be traveling for 7 hours and 55 minutes of flight time. So the question is asking us to determine the time in Brisbane when the flight is expected to arrive in Singapore, and then determine the estimated time of arrival in Singapore. So looking at the first part of the question, part A, it's asking us to determine the time in Brisbane that the flight is expected to arrive in Singapore, and that is going to be 7 hours and 55 minutes after 9:10 a.m. So starting off with my Brisbane time, and I'm going to want to put that into a number that I can add on to. So I'm going to convert that into a number and a decimal. So 9:10 is going to be 09. And then to convert my 10 minutes into a decimal, I'm going to go 10 divided by 60, because there's 60 minutes in an hour. So 10 divided by 60 is going to be 0.1667. So my Brisbane time, I'm going to convert into 9.1667. So then I can add on my flight time onto that. And my flight time is 7 hours and 55 minutes. So I can do the same process, 7 hours, and then I want to convert my 55 minutes into a decimal. So I'm going to go 55 divided by 60, and that's going to equal to 0.9167. So my flight time is going to be 7.9167. So adding those two numbers together, I get a time of 17.0834. So to find out my Brisbane time, I want to convert 17.0834 back into a time. So because it's 17, I know it's going to be PM. So I can take away 12. So that's going to be 5. And then 0.0834. If I multiply that by 60, I can get my minutes. So 0.05, and it's going to be PM. So the time in Brisbane when the flight is expected to land is going to be 5:05 p.m. So now having a look at part B of the example, and we want to determine the estimated arrival time of a flight into Singapore. So we know that Brisbane time is going to be 5:05 p.m. And before I can work out the Singapore time, I need to work out what the time difference is between Brisbane and Singapore. So to work out the time difference, I'm going to subtract my smaller time zone from my bigger time zone. So I'm going to subtract 8 from 10, because 10 is my larger time zone. So 10 minus 8 is equal to 2 hours. And because Brisbane has the larger zone, it is going to be ahead. So I know that Brisbane is going to be 2 hours ahead of Singapore. So that's going to be a nice, easy calculation. Brisbane is ahead of Singapore, so Singapore is going to be 2 hours behind. So I can take away 2 hours from my 5 o'clock and 5 minutes to work out what my Singapore time is going to be. So my Singapore time is going to be 3:05 p.m. So the flight is going to be expected to arrive in Singapore at 3:05 p.m. if it takes off in Brisbane at 9:10 a.m. and the estimated flight time is 7 hours and 55 minutes. So that's an example of how we can use time zones and time and traveling to be able to solve a problem.